A pleasant good day to all of our viewers. Welcome to another edition of Marriage Encounter. Those of you who are listening via Second Advent Radio, we welcome you just the same and trust by the grace of God that our discourse today will be meaningful. I can imagine that some of you are anxious to hear what we want to say today if you were on last week's broadcast, because we ended the broadcast talking about the issue of work. And I don't want to say it this way, but that is what I said last week, so I'm going to have to repeat myself. I want to be kind to the gentleman, but we were speaking about the case of lazy men who do not want to work. And we want to, we were talking, the question I asked last week, Pastor Adams, is how do we adjust the situation? How does a woman say to her spouse who is lazy and does not want to work, listen, I need you to do something? Well, before we go into that discussion, Pastor, why don't you lead us in a word of prayer?
Sure. Good day to our viewers and listeners, and we're delighted to have you again. And interesting conversation we're continuing in this week. And trust that you not only be on here yourself, but call somebody, call a friend up, let them join us on Marriage Encounter. And we are continuing to share valuable information with everyone. Let us pray. Our Father, we just thank you again today that we can share with our friends on another broadcast of Marriage Encounter. We are discussing some very critical areas, some challenging areas that modern marriage and couples are having issues with. And we just pray, God, that you, who are the mighty counselor, will be here with us to give us wisdom and your guidance and understanding as we share with our viewing, listening audience. For Christ's sake. Amen.
Amen. So last week, Pastor Adams, we were talking to the issue of a situation where a wife has to adjust the issue of a husband who is not motivated to work. And in one, now I want to come to the point of the ultimatum that you mentioned, just as we were ending the discussion last week. But before we get there, because you also did mention that a man may have a business at home and that's a little different. But I want to pick that up because a man may have a business at home. Let's say he has what a farm. Let's say he has a shop where he sells, maybe a corner store or something to that effect attached to the house. Let's say
Yeah.
he bakes and sells pastries or something to that effect. I mean, that is quite okay, so long as he's baking and selling the pastries,
Yes.
If
Yeah.
he is forever out of pastries, he doesn't want to go buy flour, he doesn't want to get up in the morning to make the pastries, and so he's forever out, and so half the time the store is closed. If he has
Yes.
a repair shop, tire repair shop, but he's not willing to open the shop on time and those kinds of things. So he can have a business and still not want to work. And I
Right.
just
Right.
thought I would mention that because sometimes some persons, or he may have a business, but half the time he's someplace liming, someplace playing dominoes rather than
Mhm.
being productive. And this
Right.
can be quite a concern for a woman.
Yeah. Well, I was also saying last week that when we are courting dating, we have to pay attention to that. You have to see if the person is industrious. Do they like to work? Um, if the person is not an industrious person, doesn't like to work, that is a red flag. There's a telltale sign, and you have to decide whether you're going to be married to that person anyway. Vice versa. Um, the woman should have some skill. If she's not academically trained or a career trained person, um, the woman should be in a position where she can also contribute in an economic way to the family, because things can happen. Um, Maybe the person who is the sole breadwinner, and I've seen that situation where um, the man who was the sole breadwinner, unfortunately, God forbid, um, was severely injured, had an accident, incapacitated and could not work again. Or I know of instances where the only breadwinner died and the woman had no skill, no education. That could be a serious issue. So we have to consider all those things while we are courting, dating, you know. But there's a new as a life educator, I I should remember the term. I thought I trust my memory, but you know, when you're getting older, I trust my memory that I remember the term. But there's a principle now. There's a where the concept is that successful women who are earning at a certain level are settling to get married to men who do not earn at their level. But that was not what it was traditionally. Traditionally, it was men who were earning at a particular level choosing to get married to a woman who is not at their level in terms of earning power and income. But now, I was just reading the article last week, Seth, and I'm going to remember it maybe next sometime. I'm going to mention to our viewers the exact terminology. But that's the concept now. Women are not afraid to get married to men who are lesser qualified than they are and make less income than they do. Once there's this mutuality and equality and understanding, the marriages, according to the literature, are working just the same, right? Just the same. Um, I just thought for education's sake, like I should mention that. But yes, the woman I was saying last week that if that person is
Okay.
definitely slothful or indolent, then he has to be given an ultimatum. Yes.
Yeah, before you get to the ultimatum, Pastor, I thought I heard the men clapped when you said there are some women who also need to learn to be productive, right? And I said, well, thanks for creating some balance, lest the men think that we are against them, that we are ganging up against them. You
No,
know, we hear that
no.
often. And that leads me to something else that I think is also a very important issue, and that is the issue of, you know, this whole matter of self-development. So whether you're male or female, you should be in a position where you can make a contribution to the home, one way or the other. And I want to use some examples
Yes.
here. I know we didn't really plan to talk about this today at all, but I want to use some examples here. One, you know, you have situations where the man can drive. He has the driver's license. He drives the vehicle. The woman refuses to get a driver's license. And so every time she needs to go somewhere, the man has to carry her. And if a situation develops where the man gets sick and she needs to rush to the doctor, to the hospital, she is not
Mhm.
able to do that. So the point I'm making is, you know, you don't want a situation where, you know, they may go all together and nothing happens, but then the man dies and leaves her and she has a vehicle and she cannot drive it. So there's some things about self-development where one ought to be able to be motivated enough to want to do something that they can make a contribution, if not at an equal level, at least at some level. So that's just an example I thought
Mhm.
of throw in there, you know, so that it to create a level playing field. We want to be in a position. And I say to women a lot of times, Pastor, is that you don't want to be in a position where you become so dependent on somebody else that if the man begins, God forbids, that a man begins to be abusive, you feel so hemmed in and hedged in because you cannot survive on your own. So it is important that you pursue your own goals and your dreams and your aspirations and become independent. That is quite in order. I thought I would just make that point.
Yeah. And you're very right. It's a very important point, right? Because you're actually talking to the whole issue of or the term of use is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is important, and maybe it could be that could be a problem with the example that you raised that we were discussing since last week, right? Is it a situation where the man doubts himself altogether, doesn't feel um, um, efficient, or is it there are some questions we can ask because sometimes it might not necessarily be that the person is just indolent and doesn't want to work. If that's the case, well, yes, the ultimatum that I was mentioning, you've got to get on with it. You've got to find something to do and um, be in a steady employee that, as we say, that's the local term we use for economical indice. And that is so important because the economic reality is changing, and you can't live, families cannot live on a single income budget now, so we talk about the double income with children, double income without children, um, you know. Um, so these are real issues that couples will have to deal, and that could become matters of conflict. They are real situations, right? So self-efficacy is very important.
All right, so we raised some very important issue. I think earlier on you were talking to the issue. Now you did say there's a term. I'm not sure of exactly which article you were referring to, but I sense that you may have been referring to perhaps a situation of female hypergamy. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Yes,
Where
that's the term. That's the term.
okay,
Yes, that's it.
yeah, where
That's the word I was trying to remember.
okay.
Yes, that was the term I was trying to remember. You got it right on it.
Yeah, so
Mm.
we covered that issue where change roles, I was going to say roles are changing, and once upon a time
Yes,
it was a different way, but again, and this is what we're saying, you want to be in a position where you have a certain degree of independence and not become so dependent on an individual that you feel hemmed in if something should happen to that individual. That's important. But let's get to this point because you did mention that, if the man is not working, or let's say the woman is not working and they're making no effort to do that, they're just content to stay home and watch television or sleep, or do nothing, and they're not even staying home and become meaningfully maintaining the home and that kind of thing. They're just chilling. So you mentioned the matter of giving an ultimatum. So you say, listen, the situation has become bad. I'm struggling to pay the bills. You are here every day. You're being fed. You are being
mhm,
nurtured and nourished. We have been married for so many years, and you have not had a steady job. You're making no effort to get a job, and I can't continue like this. So I'm going to ask you to take 3 months to get a job. That's my deadline for you. Now that is in order. That is in order. I can imagine some persons listening to this broadcast today and they're saying, what? So what's going to happen after the 3 months? Well, chances are he will get a job. She will get a job. You know, um, but when you give an ultimatum, you must be prepared. I want to say this. When you give an ultimatum, you must be prepared to follow through if the time expires and no change has happened. It can be that the individual has
yes,
tried. You have seen that the individual has tried and has not been successful. Then you can say, because I've seen your efforts in this regard, then we can do so, so, so. But if the individual does nothing, they
right.
say, well, let's see who is man from who is boy. And the time expires, then you must be prepared to take action.
Yeah, if it is deliberate, then you have to take some action. But if
Mhm.
you have definitely seen that the person is trying and they're unsuccessful, then that's understandable, you know. But to just take a laissez-faire approach, and that is another story.
I wish sometimes, Pastor, we had a live audience because I would like to be able to be looking at some people's faces and
And
just to
people as
gauge
and people could
their
ask
reaction.
questions right away, yes,
Hmm.
and react and ask us questions right away. How do you approach this and what do you do? Yeah, it does affect, and it affects other compartment of marriage, because remember, I think I said that, I don't remember, maybe last year, somewhere about that, because if one person is not, who has the potential to make a meaningful financial contribution, because remember, we talk about financial intimacy, where we are building, we have goals, and some of these goals will require finance. And what both of us can do in a shorter space of time, without putting our income together, it will take a longer time if it's just one person there,
Hmm.
you see. And provided, even in households where people split up, because that's new things that have emerged in modern marriages now. You are assigned this financial responsibility. You pay this, I pay this. Not putting our resources together, and people are making that kind of arrangement because finance or money for them has become a trust issue. You see, but we say that the two have become one. There's a oneness. So if one is wanting a lower income than the other, one is working, that's beside the point. The two have become one. There's transparency, there's openness. We put what we have together and we plan together because we are one. To have become one. That's the biblical principle. In fact, I today I had no my some previous meeting, my director at the union is saying, well, as the stewardship secretary, we should come up with we should put materials together to guide families in terms of their financial management and family resource management, and how people must work as a unit, as a united whole of entire families. Not just the husband and wife, but if they have children, grown children there, people must learn tips about how you can save and how you can um, cut down on waste and all of these things, to empower yourself more financially. These are very important things. It's little things that mean a lot when you manage resources. And we live in a time and age of scarce commodities. And speaking of from family finances, we have to manage our resources very well. You see, so
I,
so yeah, you're so
I,
all
I
the
want to
more
go
this
back.
treasure here.
Yeah, I want to go back, Pastor, to something you mentioned earlier. Because yes, we have come to interesting times where people are moving away from the traditional approaches to money management, etc. I went to a graduation 3 weeks ago, a primary school graduation 3 weeks ago. At a certain time towards the end of June, we have lots of graduations, and you have friends and relatives who are graduating. So you go to all these primary school graduations. When I went to school, primary schools did not have graduations, you know.
Right,
But
right, right,
the
right.
point anyhow. I went to this graduation, and as they gave out the awards and the certificates, etc., they would say what the children aspire to become. And my observation
Mhm.
is that a lot of our children are being influenced by social media. They're looking at the social media influencers. They want to become like them. And unfortunately, many married people are looking to social media for guiding principles in their marriages. And that is unfortunate. And I just want to address that issue square on. Because these new trends about,
Mhm.
you take care of that and I take care of this, etc., those are kind of dangerous. If we are going to be married, we have to be married. A marriage is a coming together. The very definition, the very meaning of the word is a coming together. And if we go back to what Jesus said, they twain shall be one flesh. And when Jesus
Yes.
used that term, the meaning of that becoming one, it's like welding two pieces of metal together. There's a certain degree of permanence. You have to come together. And you mentioned earlier today and last week as well that we're talking about intimacy across various landscapes: financial
Yes.
intimacy, cultural intimacy. We talk about aesthetic intimacy. We talk, Brian Craig has
Yes.
a wonderful chapter in his book
Right.
on
Right.
the varying
Yes.
landscape of
Yes.
intimacy.
Yes.
And so we can't want to be married in some areas and not in the other areas. And that's the point I'm making. So in spite of what social media is saying, in spite of what the new trends are, if you really want your marriage to work, you've got to be willing to unite in every aspect, because there will
Mhm.
come a time when perhaps because of sickness, you may not be working. And what
Right.
happens to the financial arrangements? There may become a time
Yeah.
when you can have a good job today and tomorrow your company becomes insolvent and you lose your job.
Yeah.
And if it is
Yes.
you take care of your own finances and your spouse takes care of her own finances, then we have a challenge because all of a sudden you have no finance to take care of.
Yes.
So
Two are
it's
always better than
really,
one.
yeah, the two are
Yeah, that's
one,
the
and we
principle.
have to be willing to do that.
Two are always better than one, according to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. I think it's 4, verse 9, or somewhere there, but two are always better than one. So what we say is financial intimacy, not financial secrecy. Financial intimacy, not financial secrecy, right? And so, yes, so the woman can confront the man and give him an ultimatum to say, well, look, we want, we have these and these and these plans, we have started here. This is our dream. This is our goals. And so it is important that you be gainfully employed and consistently employed. And I would really wish for you to make the effort. I can even plan to help you. Um, you know, yeah, so some people do this um, and how the person responds, you will know whether they are an infidel or whether they really serious about being gainfully employed. And then you may have to make another decision if you think that they are just laissez-faire. Mm.
Well, maybe we should just, I mean, I think we have exhausted that. So let's talk about something else. Um, Another area where you may want to adjust, and as I said, we can talk about so many other areas, but if you have a situation, we're talking about requesting change, be specific about the change that you want to see in your spouse. And of course, go about it the right way. You're not demanding, you're not belittling your spouse, you are not putting yourself on a pedestal, which is why we said earlier that when you recognize that there's a need for change in your own uh, uh, life, whether it be that you come to that realization or your spouse points it out, you must be willing to make the change. But let's talk about house chores, Pastor. Let's talk about house chores. We were talking about work just now. So
Trouble.
the man or the woman used to be at home, and when they were at home, they used
Yes.
to do the cooking. Now they're out working.
Yeah.
And there is
Yep.
this feeling in some
Mm-hmm.
circles that the woman should do the house chores, whether she's working or not.
Mm.
Now that is unethical. I'm just saying
Wow.
that if she's out there working 8 hours a day and you're out there working 8 hours a day, it is quite in order for you to recognize that we have to share the chores at home. And so if the man is coming home from his job and he pulls a newspaper and he sits in front of the television, or he picks up his phones and he's on social media and he's leaving his wife to do the cleaning, the tidying, to do the cooking, etc., she has a right to walk across to him one of these afternoons and tap him on the shoulder and say, "Sweetheart, how many hours a day do you work?" And his response is 8. And do you know how many hours a day I work? 8. So if we are both working the same number of hours, shouldn't we be sharing the chores at home? You ought to be specific with your request. That is in order. Let me hear your
Yes.
pastor.
It is so crucial. One of my very good authors have said that the man should not make the life of his wife a burden, but he should do everything to lighten the burdens. And therefore, because several things can be happening there. When I am preparing couples for marriage, this is one of the areas we cover, role responsibilities. And we alluded to that I think in the previous broadcast, where there are things that both persons can do and where there might be things that people are assigned. Now, I hear the couple um, not just preparing meals, but the household, because you're talking about bedroom, kitchen, bath, right? You're talking about going to the grocery stores, you're talking about several things, right? You have to do all of this, right? So how it can never be. The man should be seeking to see how we can modernize, how we can make the burden of his wife and the family lighter, and what role could he play? So you might not have modern amenities, and I tell young couples, you can't get all the things in 1 or 2 years or 3 years of marriage. Well, if both of you are double figure income people, fine, you might be able to do that. But you have to, as we say, you have to preach before you walk. You cannot get all of the things, the modern amority that or the stuff that your parents got after 20 or 30 years of marriage and 3 years of marriage, you see. And so you it becomes necessary, therefore, for you to do all of this, and there and all there's intimacy, because when we are there performing the chores together, let's say we are cooking the meal together, I'm there helping you, we can be chatting, we can be communicating, several things are happening at the same time. We go on together to the grocery store. When we come back, we are cleaning, when we are washing and packaging, we are communicating while we're there. I have benefited because my role and responsibility as a pastor, where I started my work, I am on the road for hours, hours. And my day off day, which is Thursday, you want to redeem yourself and do as much as you can. So we go on to the market, we come back home, we are packaging, we are shopping, we are doing all these things together, we are catching up on communication, we are doing several things. That, up to this age, we still do that. We still go to the grocery store together. Up
let me make this comment
to
quickly.
5 or 6 years of marriage.
Let me make this comment quickly, Pastor. And well,
a normal thing for right.
I was going to make a comment, but I have to say I can't make the comment any longer because our time is up. I don't know where the time went.
Wow.
Yeah, the time is up.
What time is up? What time is up?
I will write it down so that I do not forget to start with
We're going to
this on our
continue. We're going to continue
podcast.
in
Yes,
the
we will continue.
next
That's
broadcast.
for sure. But friends, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to write to us. It's a marriage encounter at slcadventist.org. That is marriage, MARRIAGE, at slcadventist.org. We're looking forward to hearing from you. We delight in getting your feedback, your comments, and and you may have questions. You can also write to us and send your questions, and we would take some time out to address them from time to time on this broadcast. That's all the time we have for now. So until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.